so much real estate coaching and training focuses on being a good prospector. And I think that the key to success is being a good practitioner. People are really disarmed about geography, which we want them disarmed. And that's not a sales tactic. Physicians want people comfortable, so they tell them the truth. Selling is what happens when I'm on the phone or face-to-face with a buyer or a buyer's agent. Marketing is all the things we do to get on the phone or face-to-face.
We just finished up recording our conversation with Jason O'Neill, the founder of The Circle RE. Jason is a behemoth in Indianapolis real estate, specifically in the luxury brand. For those of you who are trying to build something bigger than yourself, want to learn how to be more relational, how to communicate and drive a product better, this episode's for you. You're 100% going to walk away with more knowledge on how to deliver a better service. I don't care what industry you're in, you should be listening to Jason and getting to know him better. Let's get right into it.
Jason, thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this. It'll be fun.
Tell me, what is the value of a realtor?
That seems to be, so I've been doing this for 20 years and that has changed dramatically in my time. So it's a great question, right? So when I started, there was no such thing as his estimate, which is wild, right? Like Realtor.com, Zillow came online. So at one point in time, realtors, real estate agents really helped you find a house. But then, those of us that were on the forefront of the industry kind of realized that they shouldn't be secrets, right? Like we put signs in front of them. And so what does it morph into? And there are people that for a long time believed that the value was to help you find a house. And I think that if a real estate agent pitches that as their value or that's their value, they probably need to rethink it. I think the value, the ultimate value of a real estate agent distills down into, what I talk about is delivering clarity, confidence, and commitment, right? So they bring clarity to an otherwise confusing situation, right? They don't show up confident, but they give somebody confidence so that that person can go do their job. Because every single client that you're working with has responsibilities in their life, personally or professionally, that they need to tend to. Otherwise, they'd be selling their house on their own. And everybody wants somebody that's going to commit to their unique situation. So, but the other thing that, I think that real estate agents do, and all true professionals do this to some extent or another, is they kind of keep you out of your own way, right? Like those of us that are in the industry, like we could do a lot of contracting work, but sometimes it makes more sense to hire a general contractor because we'd spend so much time like, hey, what if we did it this way or that way? And, you're basically paying for somebody else's intellectual shortcuts in a lot of aspects of life.
So often I watch clients just stub their toes. It's like, here's the iceberg. Let's move it. Here's the path to get forward. And it can come down to equity situations, right? You get a divorce after buying a house just a year ago and you're upside down on equity and you need a guide to steward you through that. Say, it's going to be okay, right? And wrap your arms around them and take them through. So I love that answer. What happens? Let's paint a scenario. I'm a seller. Like, Jason, why should you list my house when I could just put it on Facebook? I know thousands of people that would want my house. What are you going to do for me that adds value?
Well, so hopefully we don't get there, right? Yeah. Like there should be a lot of conversations that happen before that. But if that's kind of an aggressive phone. I mean, I've received that phone call before. I'm like, well, you picked up the phone and called me. Like,
touche.
Yeah. So, but I'm like, look, maybe I'm not the best option for you. Maybe Facebook is the best option for you. But why do you want to sell your house? And so you'll hear me say a lot, catch me up to speed. Let's just calm down for a second. I'll shoot you straight. If it makes sense to list your house with me or somebody else, I'll tell you. If not, I'll tell you that too. But catch me up to speed. What's going on? Why are you selling? So, and that should lead itself into, well, I don't have to sell. You're going to hear that a lot, right? I don't have to sell. We don't. Well, but you're interviewing 3 agents, right? And you're willing to put a sign out in front of your yard. So that there's some motivation there. And you might find out, well, look, we got a big house and, I only go to the basement to make sure it hasn't flooded and we live in the main floor, or we need a main floor master, having a hip replaced, job transfer, and I work from home, getting a divorce, like you said. There's usually a reason behind the reason. And then I think you take it into timing, right? So what would be the ideal timing? See, we as real estate agents know that time, and I think I hope a lot of homeowners and home buyers and sellers listen to this too, because time is so critical in the equation that I think it's more important than price.
Mm.
It really is, because yeah, you want to list a house for $400,000. Okay, if you get $400,000 and they want you to move out tomorrow, can you do that? Well, no, right? Like, it can't move tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, but
The time determines the price.
Sure,
Which is
400,000, and so we know that. That's what I mean. Like,
Right.
we know that timing can.
Well,
really,
you mentioned earlier, by the way, what I love about your process is you take away the usual realtor smoke and mirrors of like CMAs, appraisal lingo, and just like all this vocabulary BS, and make it very simple to like, where are you trying to move to? If you're going from A to B, how can we go in the straightest line versus around here? And sometimes when I talk to real estate agents, they want to start talking about, quartz versus granite, or, little tiny things you can do to go from, put $100 in and hopefully make $250 back on the sale. And I'm like, you're missing the point. We're talking a big picture, their life. They have kids and a job. And what I like about your strategy is you boil it down to those very simple things. What I'm fascinated by is how you get to the reason behind the reason quickly. Like, they're saying they want to sell, but they don't really have to sell. But really, there's this beneath. How do you get to that emotional wavelength with people quicker? So
I think you start asking high level questions, and then you drill down, right? Like, okay, why is that important? I've got a friend who he's a financial advisor, and he's super great at his job, and he claims that the best thing that he does, he's like, okay, why? If you can ask 3 or 4 why questions, you're gonna get to where you need to be, right? And some people just come out and tell you, and then you can ask more questions. I do think so. I've had the privilege to see, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of listing presentations, and most agents make them about themselves, right? Nobody cares about us.
They make it a jerk off contest.
Yeah, nobody cares about like your awards or how big your picture on your sign is or anything like that, right? That people care about themselves. So, and people like to talk about themselves. So to that end, I think a good swing thought is that a good question is way better than any answer, any day of the week.
So
a good question is like, so why is that important?
Yeah, I think you just made it very simple, which is coming in with a genuine curiosity to understand versus to speak and to make points known. And I just heard like, ask why more often and let them talk and let them air out their thoughts, because then you can come in and sort through it versus trying to project onto them.
Yeah. And so like what you might have heard me say, or like if you're reading between the lines to Max's question, is no, you can totally put it on Facebook, but I get that. Why'd you call me?
Clarity.
Well, you know what? I saw your ad, or you sold my neighbor's house, or actually, you sold Steve's house, and Steve's my best friend, and he said that I should call you before I do anything. Right? Oh, yeah, he's a great guy. How's your house compared to Steve's? Way bigger, way bigger. I've got a cooler bar. Did you build it yourself? Mm-hmm. No. I had a contractor do it, overpaid for it, and all that stuff. And then it's more like, okay, so where are you thinking about going?
Yeah.
So, and I think that the geography is also it's a really disarming question. So, if you get like even a buyer lead on the phone, if they call on a sign or drive by, or they call you from the internet, like the best question you can ask is, oh, do you currently live in the area? Mm-hmm. Like, people are really disarmed about geography, which we want them disarmed. And that's not a sales tactic. It's, physicians want people comfortable, so they tell them the truth.
Mm-hmm. So I know you were the top individual real estate agent producer in 2019. Is that right?
I think it was in 2017. I think again in 2021.
And that just means without a team, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And most of that was in the Carmel north side area?
Yeah, north side of Indy. I mean, our office is in Hamilton County, so we do a lot there.
So that's a lot of volume of real estate sold, a lot of transactions, a lot of very key relationships handled well. just like the skill and execution required there. What does it take to get there? What did it take to have that year?
Just a lot of hard work. I'm thinking about one particular client that closed on a big transaction that year that I bumped into him at a street festival. I remember clear as day. My kid was crying. I knew his then wife from college, and he and I had gone to high school together, but he was maybe a few years older than me. And like 2 days later, he called me to sell a very mainstream price house. And I think, through over the course of the next like 7 or 8 years, we did 3 or 4 transactions together. Unfortunately, their marriage split up. They each bought a house, and some other things happened. But then he started to do really well in business and bought a big house. So there's a lot of stuff that leads up to it. It's a lot of stacking of credibility, right? And that's kind of how you look at your referrals too. That you do a good job, and there's a reason you do a good job, and then people kind of count on you to.
Well, you told me this. We were having coffee the other day, and you said it's less about generating new business, more about being a really good practitioner.
Yeah, right.
And working with quality, what's in front of you. How do you approach that differently than I guess most people?
Yeah, so the conversation was, because Max, you weren't there, but the conversation was that so much real estate coaching and training focuses on being a good prospector. Mm. And I think that the key to success is being a good practitioner. And the joke that I used, if I recall, was you'd fire your dentist, right? If your dentist is like, hey, do you know anybody with teeth? Right? You're like, come on, man. I'm like, I don't want to be here. I want my teeth cleaned. I'm going to come back, but I'm not looking to, make your business better, right? You be really good at your job. And if somebody comes to me and they have an issue, I'll tell them about you. And I think real estate is very similar to that. So being a good practitioner looks like understanding the purchase agreement, understanding deal trends, understanding buyer trends, understanding pricing trends. And they're trends, right? Like I think we're in some really weird deal trends right now where how list price and offer prices are coming in versus how they did maybe a handful of years ago. So understanding that, articulating it, like it will set you apart. I mean, and read the agreements, understand them, be able to explain them.
The first real estate coaching I ever got, my mentor at the time said, print off the purchase agreement and read it out loud 3 times every morning. And I did. Felt silly reading it out. But I understand that document. I can call out the lines. And it's important when somebody calls and they're reviewing, they want to put an offer on what is going to be their primary home. And they're like, where's that term again? Where's, this title contingency or whatever you're referring to? What I think I'm most fascinated in is client-centric systems. How are you able to manage relationships with people who maybe need more, Jason, right? They need you to be forward-facing. How are you able to handle at a high level, not only to earn the referral? I know what you're hinting at is if an agent's listening to this and they're not getting referred, like you're just not that good at your job. You need to level up. For sure. Number 1. Number 2, you don't need to ask people for business. Business is going to come by doing a good job. What is the next layer of a client care piece or aspect look like for you?
So I think the number one thing there is be helpful, right? Like there's a book, Joe Polish wrote it, and he's a great dude. It's called What's in It for Them. I'm not sure you need to read the book because I think the title kind of sums it up. Like the whole point is what's in it for them, not what's in it for you. So with that in mind, I take the philosophy of front stage, backstage, right? So front stage is when I'm out in front of clients or with clients, right? And the backstage is all the things that get done so that you can be out front with clients and you're not worrying about the backstage. A really, really good analogy is a singer, right? A musician. You have like who's huge right now? Post Malone, right? So Post Malone has one job to sing, and he's a great singer. And because he's been able to focus so much on the front stage and just his singing, he's turned into a collaborator, right? So he's doing rap, he's doing stuff with Taylor Swift, he's doing country, and he does not need to get his set from Washington D.C. to New York. Right, he doesn't need to set it up. There are people that do that, so he can focus on the front stage. Because I think that when I hear your question, it's the energy, right? How do you have the energy to be like fully attentive to somebody in the front stage? And it's all because of the backstage. And Post Malone, if we're using that as an example, right? He would crumble if he had to do all that stuff.
Right.
Right.
So
It's overwhelming.
The backstage frees you up to be spontaneous and in flow in the front stage.
Yeah, and freedom, the way you're using it is an interesting thing, because freedom is only created by more freedom. It's like yogurt, right? Or sourdough, right? You can only you can't get yogurt if you don't have yogurt, right? And if you don't have freedom, you can't get more freedom. So so the freedom to be able to be on the front stage is the freedom to be able to sit and think, right? Because the backstage is handled is what creates more freedom. It's not complicated, but it's hard to do.
you don't ever want to walk into a listing appointment with a heavy backpack of crap that needs to be done, right? Oh, that contract needs signed. This needs sent there. The other listing that I'm working on down the road needs to also be staged and prepped, and I got to prepare for that listing appointment. What does that back end look like for you? How do you keep organized?
First, to talk about that backpack full of stuff, right? I do think that it is as simple as, and look, the stuff that I've learned, the intellectual shortcuts that I've created through the years, are mostly because of mistakes, right? I'll clear as day. I remember walking into a listing appointment and, like, literally, I mean, this is so dumb. I'm walking up their driveway and I look at my phone, like, hey, I'm just gonna check email one more time. Yeah. And it's like, hey, we got bad news. The appraisal didn't come through. I'll call you in 20 minutes. And I'm like,
right.
So I tell people, don't even, whatever gets you like in the right frame of mind, by the time you get in the car for that listing appointment, you need to be there, right? Like, no phone, listen to your hype up music or a podcast or whatever. Does it
so much about what I love, what you're saying is so much about high performance is being of one mind, like totally right here. Like, if right now I have a haircut after this, if I'm thinking about who's my stylist going to be, right? I'm like 20%
guy like
worse.
you doesn't have the same stylist every time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great clubs. Let's not talk about it. But I think that level of just like oneness of mind in real estate, you can definitely tell when you're in flow with someone and you're on the same wavelength and when you're not. And what I notice is clients will do, if they just start talking to someone, they might roll down that transaction with them and like do it, but they're thinking, I'll probably not use them again if they didn't get to that flow state. And that comes from, I think, that being totally of one mind and present. What I've started to do, which I'm curious how you get into this mindset, is I will actually meditate and pray about the meeting I'm going to go into, of just like, let me release control. God, like, enter into this conversation so we can be of one mind and spirit. It sounds really like highfalutin, but like every time I do that, and I even like imagine it like this, like, let me be a conduit, the experience is so much more elevated.
Yeah. And there's another, yes. So I meditate. I do it regularly. So I don't know that I do it about like a specific appointment, but I will tell you that, and this is really apropos to real estate, is appreciation. So, like, when I say appreciation, what do you guys hear? It's not a trick question, but
I mean, like a gift. Thank you.
Yeah.
And gratitude is what I hear.
What about, now shift it to real estate? What do you think about when I say appreciation?
More equity and home value.
Something that grows in value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So appreciation is kind of like the freedom thing, right? So when you appreciate somebody, or you appreciate their situation or what they're going through, that also tends to grow. I do think that those two definitions can converge in person to person relationships. And you don't need to do this, but if you ever have to have a really hard conversation with somebody personally or professionally, it's really beneficial when you're done meditating or praying about it to, write down 5 or 10 things that you appreciate about them, and your conversation will be, they don't even need to know you did it. Your conversation will be 10 times better.
We were at a team meeting and there was an agent he had closed 5 or 6 deals in a week, and he was just weighed down. And everybody's like, what's going on, dude? Like, what's the heart of the problem? He's like, well, this went wrong and this went wrong and this went wrong. And what it boiled down to after we all kind of rallied behind him was, nobody appreciates my work. It's like, wait, do you appreciate your clients? Do you tell them like, hey, you were a great client? He's like, no, I don't do that. He started implementing that into his business. 10 times the energy shift to positive, right? Just implementing that. I love, as you were saying,
like
I was
10% more appreciation into all of your expressions, even text, calls, everything will be elevated. I love that idea.
Yeah, you don't have to ask for a review at that point. They're just raving.
Right. And they'll be, I do think that you can proactively set these things up.
Yeah.
So these are dialogues that I use, but I think that somebody could actually make this part of the process of like, what does a good buyer look like? Mm. What does a good seller look like? And you'll hear this dialogue. I only hear it in usually from commercial brokers. Like he's a good seller or real seller, right? Like in residential, it's people are kind of assuming that you're going to be a real seller, not just putting some kind of crazy number on something. But what does it look like to be a good seller? And so last week, 2 weeks ago, I had to remind the seller's agent of like how good of buyers that we've been. And I think it kind of caught him off guard because, right, it was one of those situations where it's just dumb stuff, right? They're supposed to leave the TVs and the mounts and maybe a few other things, and they just don't. They take the TVs and the mounts. And you're like, it's literally in the agreement. And then I'm like, well, put them back or give them a credit. Like, I don't know. And like, well, we'll give you $2,000. I'm like, it's 6 TVs and they need to be hung, right? Like, why are we even negotiating about this? So, I mean, we've been, really good buyers, A, B, C, D, and E. And he's like, you're right. Sorry. Like everyone's got their swords up. I'm like, so, but what does that look like? What does it look like to be a good buyer's agent? What does it look like to be a good seller's agent? And the buyer's agent stuff is tough, right? The research that I've seen has indicated, and this is dated maybe like probably close to a year now, of agents or buyers have a really difficult time articulating what a good buyer's agent does.
I actually saw a list of like 20 things a buyer's agent does, from like vetting your financing sources to doing CMAs to talking about strategy with offers to like contract. It was a lot, but it was also like, okay, I could see how someone who's like, I'm going to go power wash my driveway could make the same decision of like, I'm just going to go figure it out with this and do it myself type of thing. But when it's the sheer number of things it had.
Yeah, the list was 20. It was a list of 195 things.
Yeah, and
it's
an NAR list. It's an NAR list. Yeah, I've seen it.
So it's like you couldn't possibly, as a consumer, know how to do all of those at a high level. But I do think the question is valid, and I would love to know your answer. Someone calls you. So I got this call. A guy looking for a luxury home in Zionsville. He said, why would I not just call 10 of the best agents and say, hey, bring me a deal versus sign this BAA that my realtor friend just put in front of me? He asked me that question. And I was supposed to answer it not as a realtor. He's like, tell me this as a friend, what you would suggest. I know what I said. I'm just curious what you would say.
Was this a friend?
This was a friend.
What's his job?
He owns a tech startup that's doing pretty well.
Right. So, I would say something along the lines of, yeah, you can do that, right? But I appreciate you calling me. I think that if you do that, you're going to be making a lot of phone calls, because the only answer you're going to get to that is what somebody has in their brain or in their pipeline right then and there, right? If you hire, hopefully me, but you hire somebody to work for you, it's similar to when you sign a contract with, if you sign a contract with the Defense Department, it's a totally different ballgame than if you, as a tech company, if I call you up and say, hey man, I'd like to create an app. If you create the app, I'm sure you can just voice to AI that thing, do that, and then let me know, and I'll tell you if I'm interested in it. Mm-hmm. Right? Where are you going to spend your focus? So, we're super busy, we're super active in the market, but the people that we are committed to are the people that are committed to working with us.
It goes back to one of the 3 C's, the commitment, which I do think in the buyer agency lane, that's actually the most important one. I mean, clarity is pretty important. Confidence is somewhat important too, but the commitment is even more important, I think, with buyers because it's a longer and bumpier road. And I told him, I said, it's not that they're making this huge 30K commission from the final deal they put their name on and send it off to the seller. It was the 10 before that. And the 25 they analyzed with you before and maybe got you in the door, that they earned that final one. Because he was like saying, oh, this is so easy. They're just going to earn this huge commission. And I was like, you're assuming you're going to do all the work. So if that was true, I said, if I signed up, I would be contacting the 15 top brokers in Zionsville where you're looking, trying to find you something off market and getting to work. And he's like, and I just said, if you're not getting that from your buyer's agent, then yeah, it's probably not worth the value. So you need to pick a better buyer's agent. Yeah. Probably the person that sent you that VA didn't demonstrate their value and their proposition, their value prop strong enough.
Yeah. And that buyer agency agreement's tough to get, I think it's.
What do you think of the buyer agency agreements? People have a lot of questions on them.
Yeah.
They like them, they don't like them.
Well, I do want to get back to where we were going, but then, let's definitely talk about that. When they ask buyers, did you have a good buyer's agent? The vast majority of them say, yeah. Like, okay, what made him a great buyer's agent? Well, I don't know. He responded to my texts.
It's like they're a plush toy for you. Like,
right.
They were there.
So I think like having that, having the answers to those questions is super, super valuable. Yeah. I think the buyer agency agreement is fantastic from the standpoint that, when we did it as this state of Indiana, the Indiana Association of Realtors, it was like literally days before the settlement came out. So we were kind of, we were ahead of that, right? So being ahead of the curve. And what the intention of that was, now the settlement changed some of the dynamics of it, but the intention of the buyer agency agreement is to, so that agents and consumers understand what an agency relationship is, what they can expect from, from their buyer agent and from them as a buyer. And I think that lends itself into, hey, do you know what you pay a real estate agent for? Do you know what agency is? Do you know what a good buyer agent does? I am of the philosophy that a good buyer agent doesn't drop what they're doing at 7 p.m. on a Friday night and go to help you pack because your movers didn't show up because you hired some cheap movers, right? Like I know people that do that, but the fact that you're getting into the house, that you're closing on time, that you got the house you wanted, that your agent had enough bedside manner and presence of mind to ask the questions to get your deal accepted, or to at least find out about where you needed to be to get the deal done. Like it's pretty valuable. But I think that we're struggling as an industry and in our process to get the, not to get, but to have buyers kind of commit to you under that buyer agency agreement.
I think there was still an adjustment period of the buyer agency agreements. I don't think there's a lot of exposure, and I don't think the narrative has fully been established. And there's some agents knocking it out of the park that are doing those consultations, that are explaining their value and then backing it up. And there's a lot that are like, oh yeah, we have to do this, and they'll wait till right before the offer or even under contract, right? And I've done that before. That's the cheap way of doing it. But there was a problem with nobody knowing how they were getting paid. It was just some hidden number on the MLS, and you're just kind of out shopping together, and there's just like no knowledge of the exchange value. So bringing it above board, I think, was the right move. I just think there needs to be more of a solid, coordinated front from the real estate industry on what these are for, what these are about, and why we like them. Because I think half of the realtors, and I've even done this myself, will say, oh yeah, it's kind of dumb, but we got to do this. That's not good for the entire industry. So I think there's a lot of confusion, and the narrative hasn't totally been established on these things.
Yeah, and I think there's two components to it, right? So one, the buyer agency agreement on its surface, I think is really, really good from the standpoint that it does establish an agency relationship. And, that's going to govern the relationship to an extent between you and a buyer. The fees that get in there, that gets a little kludgy because it's kind of like, this is what I charge, but then I'm still gonna ask for somebody to pay for it if that's your business model. I think that where we go wrong is only explaining that side of the transaction to a buyer and not explaining the big picture of how the transaction runs. Right. So I think the philosophy that I like, and you guys might have heard this before, but explaining the 3 documents that govern a real estate transaction. Right. So if you sit down with a buyer and say, okay, look, there's 3 main documents that govern a real estate transaction. One is the listing agreement. The listing agreement is what the seller signs with their agent, and that's going to kind of govern the terms of what the seller is looking to get for their house, what the agency relationship is going to be with them, and what their the length of time their fee structure is going to be. The middle document is the purchase agreement, and that's going to govern the transaction. And we have, just like the seller has with their agent, we have a buyer agency agreement with our buyers. So that's going to say that it's for this amount of time, and it's going to be, this is our fee structure, and these are the things I'm obligated to you to do. These are the things you're obligated to me, and so seller has their agent, you have your agent. We're going to be the ones that submit a purchase offer. They might submit a counter offer or change the terms, and then we'll go from there. Does that all make sense? Mm. And I think that gives, again, so like you'd asked this at the beginning, I think when you start really high level and bring it down, it helps people, because you're trying to take off the table questions like, well, why don't I just go to the listing agent? What's the difference between you and the listing agent? I mean, there are people that sounds foolish to us, but there are people that don't know that. Mm-hmm. Right? You're just an agent.
I think if everybody were to navigate that way, it would have an immense positive impact in the industry. We'd have astute buyers who have realistic expectations, who understand how transactions work. The issue is kind of what you were alluding to. There's larger corporations within our industry that have workarounds to have a one-time pass to go see a house type documents, or are trying to push those upon agents and the buyers into the marketplace. And what happens whenever they do want to, go walk the one house and they want to put an offer in, and they do work with that agent that they just met 25 minutes ago on the car hood, signing the documents outside, right? To the seller, right? I guess that's when the listing agent becomes very important to be able to navigate that. But the buyer's agent can be good at talking up their buyers that they don't know anything about. And then real estate transactions fall apart because relationship's important on both sides and in the middle. You were talking about earlier, like, we've been really good buyers. Give us the TVs. Like, we're supposed to have the TVs. It's not even a negotiation point. You owe us the TVs, and we've been great.
We negotiated a month ago.
Yeah, it's not like we've pissed you off. We've been great. And that is what my contention point becomes, is I prep my sellers to receive the right offer from the right buyer who has the right relationship with their agent, who's bringing the offer to me, to a sense, and being able to put all those pieces together. Every day I'm like, gosh, what is this agent doing? And it maybe isn't even the agent. I'm like, how well does this agent even know their buyer? Who they're walking through the house? Like, where's this relationship at? I don't know. There needs to be a change.
In 2022, we hit the most number of agents in Indianapolis. I think it was 17,000. I could be wrong. Maybe it was 2023, right around there. It swelled to the highest amount in the ranks in history. And we've steadily we've been ebbing and flowing, but going a little bit downhill. And the reality is, the change from the settlement the shockwaves have not totally affected everything. And I think we're going to see agent count, especially in the era of.
Well, there was a lot of noise, but I've not watched any policing.
Well,
I've not once had to send a buyer.
Let me get to what I was going to say, which was, we're going to see a massive decrease in the amount of agents. And it's, I think, a lot of consolidation, and the ones who do it really well and can explain what you're explaining, the fly-by-night hobbyists are evaporating. I see less and less of them each passing year. I don't know if that's what you're seeing, but that's what I'm seeing.
I don't see that, and I don't see that continuing. I see a world where this job, if you will, this career is super, it's going to be super hard to be 40 hours a week, right? It might not, you might still make okay money, but if you're working 40 hours a week and you consider that a full-time job, there are always going to be a handful of agents that do that. But there's always going to be a handful of agents that are okay selling doing one or two transactions a year. And I think that the problem is, and this is, again, it's just my opinion, but those agents, the one or two transactions a year, they don't get out of the business. I mean, they rarely do, because the barriers of entry aren't super high. The fees are high, but not compared to, I think it's just a cost of doing business. And maybe they have somebody, if they're on a team, somebody's paying it for them. It's the person that is doing, 6 to 15 transactions a year, and they're making a really, really good living,
trying to be full time.
Yeah, and a 20-25% downturn in income, they're just like, I'm out.
Right.
I'm out. I'll put it in referral, and that's because you really can't. You're either doing 2 or 3 deals a year, or you're doing 15 and above. It's that middle, and those are good agents, right? Those are they're solid agents. They're not out there, buying leads and not caring and screwing people over. But those are the ones. That's what I fear, though. That those are the folks that get out of the business, and we don't lose, the people that are just in it for 1 or 2 deals a year. They don't do any training or continuing education other than what's required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the only reason I said that was because there is a extra step in the process and an extra barricade for buyer's agents, which is the buyer agency agreement.
Yeah.
And if you can't, not to say it's like the hardest thing ever to get it signed, but I think with more education and awareness from consumers on what that is and the fact they can negotiate and have to pick, once you've picked for the good of the next 6 months or a year, that's not totally known in consumers right now. And once that is, I think a lot of these weaker agents that can't back it up are out of here.
I just think it's going to do what you were saying, and for it to actually hold the weight that you're alluding to, there has to be some sort of policing, which means money has to be spent that's never going to be spent. There's no policing.
Well, there's policing. I mean, nobody polices your listing agreements.
Yeah, that's,
right.
Right.
I mean, now the seller would, because you're putting a sign in front of their yard and you're
posting it on Zillow,
and you're doing a lot of
huge
work
issue
for that.
if they didn't want you to sell their house.
Right. But yeah, I think that it's just, I could argue a lot of this round or flat, but what I'm thinking of is a couple I met with that they're, trying to downsize one final time to something that they still own, but is super small. Like the house is not big, but way too big for them. And I was referred to them by somebody who used to work for me. And then they mentioned these neighborhoods they wanted to go to. And, I called the reps there and like, they're working with somebody, and I think they signed something with them. And they didn't even know what they signed, right? Somebody went out to interview for the listing before me, and, they were talking about these communities, and they're like, we wonder if we could, do this, production style home. It was like, you want to just drive over? You want to take a look at them?
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, of course, right? Who wouldn't say no to that? But then, it creates a ripple effect. Just walking through a model home,
right? Signing
a 6-month agreement with somebody that they hadn't decided, they didn't understand the repercussions, and that's on them. I'm not saying it's not, but the repercussions.
More than one client in the past 6 months of this is
right, and that's some of the bedside manner, right? Like the repercussions should be equivalent to the conversation of the levity of the document you're signing.
I had an agent calling me saying, "Hey, John Smith signed with me, and you just went and wrote a purchase agreement with him." And I'm like, how would I have known that? One, I asked, and they said, "No, we don't have an agency relationship with anybody else." And so you're waking up every day to go chase your documents around?
Right.
That's your job now?
The reality is you closed that deal, got the commission, and they didn't get anything. So it does kind of go back to the policing element.
But I want to see, but the policing element, I want to see that's going to have to be tested at some point in time. And I think that there's not enough money really there for somebody to, and it's really poor form for a brokerage to sue a buyer because they didn't want to work with them any longer.
Right. And it's, what weight does that actually hold if the relationship wasn't there, which is what this industry comes back to, is the relationship wins, and chasing around documents isn't going to get you very far, I don't think. Before we go to we kind of do like a rapid fire question at the end. I want to pick your brain on the lean to luxury. So when did the Circle start, the boutique brokerage with Circle?
I started at the tail end of 2020. I think my documents from the state came through on December 31st of 2020.
So 2020. I'm curious around a couple of things. One, how many agents do you guys have? 15. So under 20, call that boutique, in today's marketplace tends to not be the trend. It's the opposite direction. It's those types of brokerages are being either bought or partnered with the larger nationwide branding and referral across all the things that everybody tries to. We're at Properties for a reason. We like to have the ability to reach across further than just Indiana. What was the calling to go boutique?
I started my career in Tampa and I started boutique, and to me, we've talked about freedom a little bit. It gave me more freedom to run the business model, the culture, the core values, the way that I wanted to. I think that with national companies you get a lot. You also you get lumped in with a lot of other agents. So it allowed me to really kind of dictate what I wanted our reputation to be before we had a reputation. So like we've got a questionnaire of, it's like 6 or 8 questions, and they're not hard questions, but what it does is it establishes the culture of, like, if you've answered yes to these, you might not know who somebody we bring on 6 months from now, but that they'll have answered yes to these questions too, right? That they're committed to these certain things. So for me, really just exploring my creativity and seeing if I could do it. Also,
I think it was a very hard time to do it.
Yeah,
it might be one of one to be able to launch 2021. Beginning of 2021.
Yeah. Well, and one of our philosophies and business strategies actually is to like make our materials so good that the agents that come on just they just use them, right? Versus getting creative and everyone's in Canva, everyone has a different font, and then so that kind of creates some a stickiness factor like out in the marketplace where people are like, oh, I see your signs everywhere. I mean, we have less signs than big companies, but all of our signs look the same. And at Properties is like that, and a lot of other companies are too. But I think it matters.
The choice to go more on the luxury side, is that a testament to clients, or what's the strategy there?
Clients, background. From a material standpoint, I think that in any business, especially real estate, it's easier to scale down than it is to scale up, right? And that's why look at the car industry, right? So if you have like Mercedes or BMW that have their S-Class or their 7 Series, they sell less of those cars than anything else, but they market those cars in order to, sell other cars. I listened to a podcast, this was a long time ago, but the guy was either interviewing or telling a story about some tailor in Canada, and he's like some big shop, but he's got some crazy thread that, puts out a, $15,000 suit. And he's like, how many $15,000 suits do you sell? He's like, maybe one a year, but the $15,000 suit sells a lot of $1,000 suits. Right. So you look at like the Mercedes, the S-Class, which you don't see a lot of, sells a lot of C-classes and E-classes. So, and I use that in listing appointments too. Like when there's very, very few. I mean, the amount of times that we've been like, we're not a good fit for you, it's probably not because of the property. So we don't, we list any properties. But sometimes people will be like, well, your stuff is nice and I see expensive homes on your website. Like, do you do our price point? which is still a great price point. I'm like, well, but it scales down easier, right? I can use the same photographer, the same printer, the same brochures, and it's easier to do that than it is to walk into a $900,000, $1 million house and say, okay, now I've got to start from scratch.
Got to hire
Yeah,
a new branding.
Might be me.
Yeah.
Last question before we go to our quick fire. What does you just talked about a listing that you were securing that's 22,000 square feet, had this special designer and architect, and I'm sure it's just so much, exquisite details. What is a client like that, a seller who is in that category? Maybe it's above, I'm sure it's above like 5 million. What are they seeking in a realtor that's different than in the more affordable, say sub 500K-ish price points?
I don't, so I've given this a lot of thought. They're not seeking somebody different in a realtor than probably anybody else, right? Maybe if they're super successful in business and in hiring people, this is one of the things that we get to see in our business. You can pretty quickly establish the clients that you've had that have had employees and have hired and unfortunately had to fire people before. Like it's a game changer. You'll hear people say like, oh, it's not personal, it's just business. They're not running a business. It's personal, right? Like I sign the front of paychecks. It's personal, right? Like, so I think that when you get into the individuals that probably have more, business or professional experience, and they're selling their houses, and those houses might be a lot more money. They're used to hiring people. They're used to firing people. They're used to getting professional advice. So they're also used to asking a lot of questions. And I think that the biggest mindset shift that I think people can make in that is that just because somebody is really, really inquisitive about your pricing strategy, your fee structure, how long you think it'll take, what your marketing plan is, why you have photos or videos or whatever, it's not because they doubt you. It's because they're curious and they want to make sure that you guys are working on that together. And, so the same person that they're going to treat you the exact same as they do their financial advisor. And there's going to be a lot of questions and you've got to be prepared to answer them, but it's not how when you're younger and somebody asks you something, you just assume that they're like, they think I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right. They don't just push things under the rug or just skip over details. And I know that probably excites you because it makes you better. Because I'm sure you get questions that are maybe ones you've never heard before.
Yeah. And when you get, again, we've talked a lot about like the power of questions, like asking really, really good questions is the key. Here's one that I think everybody could employ. And this it works every time. So you got a home buyer, right? Are you going to be getting a loan or do you think you're going to pay cash for it? You will get 2 answers, right? Or 3 answers, right? They don't know we're gonna pay cash, or they'll laugh at me like, you think I can pay cash for a $300,000 house?
Yeah.
Right. But you've
3.5% down, buddy.
but you've complimented them.
Right.
Right.
Fair.
Right. You're treating them the same as everybody else, but you're actually getting to the heart of what you want to know. Right. Are you getting a loan on this? Do you need a lender referral? What are you putting down? Right. Like, because that's the follow up. Because otherwise, somebody with like no bedside manners, like, how are you gonna pay for this? And that's just insulting.
Right.
You're asking a strategic question.
Being offensive or not offensive. You're playing offense, not defense. You're setting up the stage to be able to lift them up.
So like on some of the higher end stuff, one of the questions I'll ask is, are there any areas of the property that we definitely don't want photographed or online? Again, that is, I need to know the answer to that, but I've got to ask it in such a way that is thoughtful. They might not have thought about that, but it gets their mind working in a way. Okay. Yeah. In fact, there are.
Why were you picked more than others?
On this particular one?
With luxury. Asians.
Sometimes it's who refers you. And I think a lot of times it's the rapport and the strategy. And really, again, my presentation is not about me. It's really about the client, what their goals and what their timing are. And then that just, it leads itself into a lot more discussions. You guys, I don't know if you remember this, but one of the things that I'm a big believer in too is the difference between marketing and selling. So because I know that so many people go in and talk about like their marketing, I'll tend to take that off the table and say, hey, anybody can copy our marketing, right? Like we don't own our photographers. Anybody can hire our website company, and you can, if you have deep enough pockets, you can do the video stuff.
I know some big brands that don't give all the strategy away until they sign. Like you can't give it all away because they're just going to go do it. It's very scarce.
Yeah. Scarcity mindset is not
Attractive in general.
I do think you want to tell them, hey, like I'll give you a price and I'll tell you what we're going to do. But I don't make your decision if you can avoid it. Don't make your decision on the price that I think you should sell your house. And ideally, I think this is where it should be, and this is the range that could change. It could definitely change in 3 months when you go to list a house. But at that point in time, let's you and I sit around on the same side of the table and figure out what's best for you. But the difference between marketing and selling is huge, right? So I think that selling is what happens, if you're talking about a seller. And think about your real estate business this way too, right? Selling is what happens when I'm on the phone or face-to-face with a buyer or a buyer's agent, right? Selling is what happens as a real estate agent when you're on the phone or face-to-face with a home buyer or a home seller, right? That's selling. Marketing is all the things we do to get on the phone or face-to-face with one of these people.
I was just explaining that to Trace, our new marketing admin. I'm like, we post all these houses out, not to sell the houses. It's to get more houses to sell.
Right.
So tell the story as if it's to get more houses to sell. It's like, oh, wait, you don't actually want to sell 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I want to sell it, but I'm going to sell that like this.
I can't think of one time I just posted.
It's like, here's all these buyers.
And it was like, yeah, that's the one. We just saw it when we
It was on Instagram.
and it was on Instagram. First post we saw.
Right.
Never, right?
I found my home on Instagram. You ever heard that before?
But how
We're
many
winning
people,
relationships, right?
How many people, when you're in that listing appointment, like actually talk about the selling, right? So then we talked about front stage, backstage. Like the real magic happens when you take your backstage and then move it to the front stage, right? Why should I hire you? Because we have this ABC process on the backstage and we've named it and marketed it, and here it is on the front stage, right? So I'll have that conversation. So I'm taking the marketing off the table. Well, so-and-so is a great marketer and they've got whatever. Great. What happens when the marketing works? Do you remember when I asked you about so I know your timing. I know where you're moving to. I know where your sister lives because you want to live close to her. I know what your wife does and when her contract job expires, right? All of that was not on accident. It's by design so that I can sit here and say, okay, that if you want to sell your house in 6 months, I'd price it here, right? That's the selling aspect, and I think that far too few agents talk about what they're going to do to actually like help sell the house,
or put the most money in their pocket. Or I think that's why flipping is really hard, because I can call back to early in the conversation, which was time. People want to flip houses and make the most money, but then list at the worst time because the contract went bad. Or you're climbing up a hill when you're not in that right season, and not. You have to be, if you're in the wrong season, you have to be okay to let some money and some other ancillary things go.
Hey, look, time is a 4-letter word, like literally and figuratively. Right?
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man. We have a couple.
This is fun.
Questions that we'll hit you with before we get out. You want to jump in, Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me confirm, you live in Carmel?
I do, yeah.
Okay, what's the best place to grab a bite to eat in Carmel?
That could change on any given day, but I would say we like Savor a lot, but Freeland's is a new restaurant. It's super bougie, but it's really, really good. Freeland's. It's in the North End neighborhood, which is like 136 and just east of
what type
Meridian.
of food?
Like high-end American.
Okay.
I've
never heard about that one.
It's great. It's really good.
Yeah. You seem like the guy to ask.
Oh, thanks. I think
you just seem you got some class and culture.
What's one habit that's changed your life?
Thinking about my thinking. So just more of, spend time, think about why you think something, what could be wrong with it? Why, am I thinking about it the right way? I think that the problem, one of the guiding philosophies of that with me is the problem isn't the problem. The way we're thinking about the problem is the problem.
It's the preconditions to what you're dwelling upon.
Yeah, like there's a crazy mind shift that happens if you go. Make sure I get this right because it impacted me. How do I get the seller to accept my offer? Versus how do I get my offer accepted by the seller? So in those two, you put the onus. All the onus is on the seller in the first one, and in the second one, the onus is on me in the offer. Right. So just small things like that, thinking about your thinking can really, little, I can't remember what they call it, little tweaks that make huge differences.
How do you create space and time for that?
You got to carve it out. Right. And like we said, with freedom or space creates more space. But I mean, you really do need to sometimes just go inside yourself in your own head and say, look, I'm going to take hopefully an hour, but even if it's 15 minutes and, not be on the device or be near a computer and, just sit and think, whether it's, meditation or just sometimes I'll just sit with a notebook and write down questions. Another really interesting thing that I've been experimenting with for the past couple of years is, the reticular activator, right? That's the whole yellow car thing. Do you see yellow cars? You're like, no, but now you're going to see them all the time. If you ask yourself a question, well, and then you also know how, if you're like, oh gosh, I can't remember that guy's name, and you're driving down the road 2 days later and you're like, Tom, just out of nowhere.
My neighbor all the time, Timothy.
So your reticular activator is always working. And then, so how do you get that to work for you? You ask yourself open-ended questions. And by open-ended, I mean, you don't even put a question mark on it in your brain, right? So you plant the question there and then just move on with your life.
I've heard this said by Joshua Waitskin, who was like a chess and martial arts prodigy at a young age. He said on a podcast that he asked himself a question, very, very important question of what's the most important thing I should be spending my time on in this season of life or something like that. And he'll go to sleep. And then oftentimes over doing that repeatedly, you arrive at the answer because your subconscious will start to sift the sand to find the gold.
Yeah, right? It's working for you. That's right.
And I love asking yourself questions and not having, because you're not going to know that second answer. But it's funny how things are revealed once you set the preconditions on what to dwell on and think about.
I like the win notebook. I was sharing this with the team yesterday. Every day I write down what were 3 wins today, what are 3 wins tomorrow.
Yeah.
And waking up all right, I know where we're headed. I like that though. You gotta make this sourdough. You gotta think on what you're thinking. You have to have the thoughts to continue.
You can also take that to why is that important?
Right.
So the phrase is so that, right? I want to win this because we're talking about real estate. I want to, get this listing so that I do a really good job for the sellers so that I have a bigger presence in this neighborhood I'm trying to break into so that I can sell 10 houses in there in the next.
Thinking about why is this important, right? It's so often assumed, I always want to get 10% more, right? The saying is 10% more is the path to hell. Everyone, Jeff Bezos wants 10% more. So it's I should naturally want to get higher price listings and more. Well, maybe not. Maybe actually you need to spend more time with your wife at 4:30 p.m. And that's the very best thing for you.
Right.
And so I think it's a really good thing to think about. And I think oftentimes we are shielded from things that we think we want, we don't get. It's because you weren't ready for it. And I believe in the divine, so I believe in that. And sometimes people do get what they were not ready for, and you see it blow up very often in those people's faces. So be careful what you wish for.
Careful what you're chasing, you just might catch it.
Yeah, right. What is an area of your last question? I know we've said last question 5 times, but genuinely the last question. What is an area of your life you're currently working on growing?
I think it's that balance between I don't know the answer to the work-life balance thing. I don't think that I don't know that there is one, right? Like, when you're working, you're pretty fully committed, and when you're not working, you're pretty fully committed. I don't know if that's balance or if that's just like you're extreme, right? Like, I don't know if somebody were to say work-life balance, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to go work half an hour at work, and then I'll be half an hour I'll be a dad.
Right.
And then half an hour for work, and then half an hour I'll be a husband, right? So whatever, work hard, play hard, that sort of thing. Like kind of figuring out what.
Have both feet planted in where you're at.
Yeah.
Versus one in, one out.
Yeah. So I think that's
maybe.
That's hard.
It's a hard industry, right? Because all three of us sitting here could open up our computer and justify work.
Mm-hmm.
And we could do that for hours on end, and then we could close it, and then the phone rings, and we could justify why we need to answer it. All of us are dads. I'm the newest dad. My son's 8 months as of yesterday, and the last 8 months that's been the main thing. It's like, how do I get more? How do I get more time? Because I don't want 18 years from now to go, oh, I just wanted the 10% more, and I had 100% less with him.
Well, it's always I'm working so hard to have more money, to have more freedom and time for my family. No, you aren't.
It was a conundrum, right?
You can, I can go find people in third world countries who have way better relationships with their family and much better memories. And yeah, they probably want more money, but it's like they have what you're searching for, and they have nothing in terms of material. So it's a decision. What life do you want to live right now?
It is. And, bear in mind that workaholic is for some reason the only acceptable addiction in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it's crazy when you think about it.
Because that helps with the workaholism.
It still might not be acceptable, but people are like at a party, like, I'm a workaholic. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
But that's where, kind of thinking about your thinking and thinking about like, where's my time needed and where's my focus?
I love that. I hope people got to the back half of this conversation and skip over the buyer agency agreements we got back down into. We are over an hour. But anyways, where can people find out more about you if they want to connect with you?
Oh, I'm online, Instagram, I guess Facebook, if that still exists. Our website.
By the time this releases, it'll be defunct now.
Circle Real Estate. You Google us. I think there's some stuff out there.
Appreciate you, Jason.
Yeah.
For coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.